Which of these two cameras is the best if you are trying to get into streaming or content creation? I reviewed them, so you don't have to. What's up guys, Andrew here on my channel GearedInc, where I get to share what I'm passionate about with you. And on my channel, that's PC tech, games, and gear. And today we've got some gear to review, specifically two webcams that are hands down the most popular webcams for streaming, or have been the most popular webcams for streaming. Specifically, I'm talking about both from Logitech, the C922 Pro, which has been around for about three and a half years, and then the Brio, the 4K variant from Logitech as well, which has been around for about 2. The reason I'm doing this camera review now, due to the massive amount of webcams that were needed due to people working from home or school, you either couldn't find these cameras, or if you could, you're gonna be paying 2 or 3 times what they should be sold for. And while GPUs and other computer components continue to be scarce or cost ridiculous amounts of money, these two you can finally get at MSRP, and my links are going to be down below if you want to purchase either of these. That being said, if you want to run into a local Best Buy and they have it in stock, the Brio is actually rebranded as just 4K. So this is actually Brio. It's the same thing. Ignore the branding just in case you were curious. So in terms of how these tests are set up, I have different lighting conditions because I think that's something that a lot of people are curious about. I have kind of like the reality of what these cameras look like. But without further ado, let's dive into it.
This is an audio test of the C922 Pro Logitech streaming camera. This is the test of the C922 Pro Logitech streaming camera. This is an audio test of the Brio 4K Logitech camera. This is an audio test of the Brio 4K audio camera.
At 720p 60 frames, the most common still for streaming content on Twitch, you're going to immediately notice not just a quality difference, but again, the light allows the sensor to pick up more detail. This is going to be consistent through all these tests, and we're starting with ideal lighting. Now moving on to 1080p 30 frames a second, again, a very commonly streamed setting, you're going to notice again that even though these are exactly the same resolutions, and I am using Logitech's capture technology, which is why there's some stuttering, it's not great, the Brio still is going to be able to bring more detail. Now, the Brio has this advantage at 1080p going up to 60 FPS, which is honestly why a lot of people bought it, not for 4K. You're going to see way more smooth action. Overall, the picture is going to look better, in my opinion. More frames a second means everything is going to seem more natural when you're talking or moving, which quite frankly, may matter some people, but I think it's actually a very big selling point if you were going to buy these. And then at 4K, you're obviously getting way more detail at this resolution. You're able to see more of the imperfections on my face. You're able to see more of the detail in the background because obviously we're doing 4K now versus 1080p, and we're doing this at ideal lighting as far as this is kind of what the best you could expect or hope for. But what if you don't have great lighting? Because a lot of people don't. And that's really what I wanted to drill down on these two cameras, because I think this is really where the difference between these two is going to come into play. So at 720p with dark settings, the C922 really just can't keep up with Brio as far as the sensor. I mean, you're barely getting any detail. It's hard to see what's going on. It's pretty stark in terms of the contrast. When you go up to 1080p, it is far better because now the sensor is widening. It's bringing in more light, meaning you're going to get more pixels. However, the Brio is still showing its strength for having an overall larger sensor because you're able to pick up more detail. And this is the same when we go up to 60 frames a second. It's the same story. It doesn't look great on either situation, but again, if you don't have a lighting kit and you wanted to use this in a dark room where literally the only light source is off the camera and the monitor in front of you, this is kind of what you can expect. Now, if you have lighting that's dark, what if you just have bad lighting, like the light over your head? I tested that as well. So as far as this goes, even with bad lighting, the Brio, once again, doesn't matter if we're starting here at 720p or as we continue to move through this testing, what you are going to notice is that the larger sensor in the Brio is far more capable of bringing in light, which is going to be more detail at every single resolution that you have this thing on. Not that this lighting looks great. Obviously, I think it makes everything look pretty terrible, but that's the point. Not everyone has a lighting kit to start out with, and especially if you're just buying this camera straight out, I want you guys to get a feel for some of the obstacles or some things you're going to have to overcome. Now, I know what you're saying, that's all well and good, but people buy these cameras not necessarily to do content creation, and they both do have basically spots on the bottom where you can screw in like a stand if you want to use them that way. But most people use these for what? Streaming games. That's where honestly there's less of a difference. So using Chivalry 2, which I love this game, you can see through the testing that it doesn't matter if we're doing this at 720p, it doesn't matter if, again, going up to 1080p, the reality is that your character, your face on the screen is most of the time going to be so small that it's really not going to make a difference at what resolution or what frame per second you are streaming this in. The only time that it's actually going to show up is when you are focusing on your face, maybe when you're talking in between games or you're changing the screen so you fill up the entire screen. And then yes, at that point, yeah, it may actually make a difference, but that's not the majority of time, right? Knowing these two things, does the Brio make sense for twice the cost when you're not gonna necessarily be using 4K on it all the time? Well, Past Andrew has some thoughts.
Because the reality is if you're trying to get into content creation or you're trying to make videos of any kind, this might be a great alternative to buying a DSLR if you just simply don't have the budget. Being able to do 4K like this with a good lighting setup and a good microphone allows you to do things that you really can't do, in that price range, at least if you're trying to record in 4K. So this might be a really good option for those who are looking to get into content creation, or if you're trying to do something, more along, let's say, the hot tub variety streaming. Not that I know anything about that.
And that's kind of where I fall with these cameras. If all you're going to be doing is purely game streaming, there is no reason to spend more money on the Brio because your face is going to be so small most of the time, you're not going to yield any of the benefit. But if you're going to be doing content creation, one-on-one talking to the people watching your streams, maybe, just like I was saying, you want to start making videos like this, but you don't have $1,000 to drop on a DSLR, there's a very big argument for using this camera for more than its intended use. And so personally, the Brio is my choice. For 200 bucks, it makes a lot of sense because you are not bound by, things you may be with the C922. But if all you're going to be doing is streaming video games and you're just going to be a tiny screen on the bigger screen, don't buy the Brio. In fact, you can find these C922s now for $50 or less, or if you're willing to buy something used. And so it's a tremendous value if you're just trying to get into the game and you don't have a lot of money to spend. Anyway, guys, I really enjoyed doing this review. It feels so good to get some content out. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on in my life right now, which I don't want to get into the details, but just know I'm not going anywhere. I never did. I just am trying to find a way to make sure that I can get out consistent, high value content for the people who continue to come back to my channel. And it's gonna happen, but it's kind of a roller coaster right now. So stick with me. I promise I'm not going anywhere. But as always, if you like this video, leave me a big thumbs up. If it was garbage, leave me a thumbs down. Remember to get subscribed and hit that bell icon so you know when these videos drop next. As always, thanks to everyone who continues to watch my content. I'm Andrew. I'm gonna continue to make these videos whether you watch them or not. But hey, I hope you do. And guess what? I'll see you next time here on GearedInc.